I'm Justin Mott, and welcome to my home here in Hanoi, Vietnam. And if you're new here, my channel is dedicated to all things photography from the perspective of a full-time working professional photographer. And today's episode, like many, are aimed at you amateurs out there who maybe are struggling from finding some depth and meaning in your photography, or you sort of suffer from imposter syndrome. And before I tell you my story about kind of before I made it, I want to tell you what you're going to learn from today. And what you're going to learn is that you don't need a major publication behind you. You don't need awards in your photography. You don't need a massive audience. You don't need any of this for your photography to matter. What you need is depth, consistency, and the courage to stay with the story longer than anyone else. I'm going to share with you my experience about a project I started almost 20 years ago and what it taught me about meaningful photography and having purpose in my photography. So I first met and photographed Nu about 20 years ago. She was beneath a staircase at the Friendship Village on the outskirts of Hanoi, rocking gently back and forth, humming the same tune over and over again. She was quiet and easy to miss unless you actually had time to explore a little bit and slow down. The Friendship Village is a home and vocational center for children and veterans living with disabilities linked to Agent Orange. Agent Orange is the herbicide used during the Vietnam War, or as they call it here, more appropriate, the American War. And the chemical in it, the dioxin that it contains, still lingers in the environment, seeped into the waterway, into the foods that people consume, and in many cases into the families that fought during the war, and children that are still being born to this day are still affected. And that's 50 years ago. And so when I first moved to Vietnam in 2006 as a young freelance photojournalist, this story about Agent Orange was the first one that I wanted to tackle. And so my first attempt at this story, I photographed pretty broadly, big coverage, lots of images, trying to explain sort of everything. And I spent my time at this orphanage about an hour outside of Hanoi, and I spent about a week there just sort of trying to tell this story. That story was what I still believe powerful, and judge me today. Well, don't judge me. You shouldn't judge anyone. But, keep in mind, my images that I'm going to show you today are from 20 years ago. It's very fresh in my photography, very new in my career. But that first story was eventually published in Newsweek as a multimedia piece, and Newsweek was a big deal back then. And once the story ran and was published, I was excited to get the story out there. I was naive enough to believe that it would make a big change and it would have a big impact. And the reality is once the story was published, the world sort of moved on to the next story, as it often does, as it will continue to do. And that bothered me. Yeah, I was naive thinking work like this would immediately have an impact, but I realized something uncomfortable. If I relied the rest of my career on media validation and reaching a huge audience to give my work weight, it would always feel sort of temporary. And so shortly after the story was published, I decided to revisit the topic and take a different approach. No publication in mind, no funding behind me, no awards that I wanted to enter this in, just time and a clear understanding of what I was after. And so with the help of my local friend, Mrs. Thuy, she was sort of like my Vietnamese mother at the time, and I was volunteering teaching photography at her school, she helped me get access to another center closer to Hanoi, also working with victims of Agent Orange, teaching them English in trade schools. And that's the day, the first time I visited that center with her help. Getting access is hard anywhere, but here it was quite challenging. That's when I heard the humming of Nu underneath that staircase. She was 14 at the time, autistic, blind, partially deaf, nonverbal, and instead of trying to tell the story of the entire place or the entire war, I chose to try to tell the story about victims of Agent Orange and the tragedy of war years after through her. And this was a turning point, and this is a point that I want you to understand, that depth happens when you stop trying to cover everything and commit to something. I documented her life. I spent a couple weeks there. I learned about her family history. Her grandfather was exposed to Agent Orange during the war. Her father was born with impairments passed down from his father, and it was passed down to her as well. And her life was shaped by forces long before she was born from a war that she had nothing to do with. And so each year, as I got to know Nu and her story more and ask good questions, as a good photojournalist or journalist would, I learned that every year during the Lunar New Year, she goes home to visit her grandparents. And so I decided to tag along for one of these visits and try to learn more about her and her past and her father's past and her grandfather's past. And when we visited her home, it was clear that her grandparents didn't have the resources to care for her. And her father and mother had separated, and the culture here, they had both had moved on. She didn't really have a solid place to go to after her 5 years, we're going to run up at the center. See, most children at the center spend about 5 years. They learn a skill, they learn English, and they go back to the home village. The problem with New is she didn't really have anywhere to go back to. That made me scared. It made me worried. It made me concerned about, like, okay, like, wow, this is something that I think I can help with. And so, with the help of Twee and the help of her school, I made a choice, and we organized a small fundraiser in Hanoi. We held an exhibition. I showed her story, the images I had taken documenting her, and I also sold prints of other pictures that I took around Vietnam that were more appropriate for people to hang on their walls. And people helped, and friends gave what they could, and strangers gave what they could. And it wasn't viral, it wasn't glamorous, it wasn't career defining, but it mattered, and it was purpose, and it was much more fulfilling than having my work published in Newsweek. That was almost 20 years ago. News story was never even properly published in a major publication, and that didn't matter to me. And I made a commitment through that exhibition and through my time with New, and that her story wouldn't end when my time ended with her. And so here we are, almost 20 years later. Every Lunar New Year, we return to the center, we check in with her caretakers, we make the yearly payment to the center, we bring young students back with the help of my friend Twee to learn about the history, to learn about the effects of war, and be a part of New Story. And there was no big NGO behind this, no major funding, no headlines, no publication, just consistency and commitment and responsibility. And here's what I want you guys out there, you amateurs or even pros who are looking for some sort of substance in your work, especially those of you struggling with imposter syndrome. Meaning in photography doesn't come from scale. It comes from staying. It comes from committing. Travel photography doesn't have to be just about collecting locations. And street photography doesn't have to be just about collecting pretty photos of light shafts and juxtapositions. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. If you crave more depth in your work, it's not about new lens or a bigger platform or having the resume and publications behind you. It's about committing to something long enough for it to change you. And so I started this journey in photography thinking the goal was getting my work published, and that would always make a difference. And I was naive to think that, and I was wrong to think that. Publication is exposure, sure. It helped me get other jobs. It helped me get assignments. It helped me sustain a career in photography. But you don't need permission from a big outlet for your project to matter. You need patience. You need sincerity. You need to think about what you want in your photography. You don't need permission from a big outlet. You don't need a resume. You don't need to be one of the big names in photography for your images to matter. There's so many different ways. This story is a great example, and that one night of just raising money has helped a little girl have a whole different life. There's a version out there for people that care about stuff like this, but enough of you have come to me asking about this kind of work and thinking you're not capable of it, and I just want to say you are. Your work can have an impact. Images can have an impact. Images can matter if you put the time, if you have the discipline, if you stay with it, and if you have sincerity in your heart. That's what I believe. Anyway, that's my little story about New. That's my little story about photographers looking to have meaning in their work, and I hope I inspired you guys out there to go start a project. It's something I strongly believe in. And that's it. That's all for today. Happy Lunar New Year to you guys out there. Anyone interested in my online classes, mentorships, workshops, my one-on-one Q&A, all that and more is available at askmott.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to have a wonderful day.